When you zoom out on the Jeffrey Epstein story, it's not just about him. It's about the people around him: presidents, princes, billionaires, spies, girlfriends, enablers, and family members. The scandals weren't confined to a creepy townhouse or a private island. They stretched from Buckingham Palace to the White House, from Wall Street boardrooms to MI6 briefing rooms. So today, we're connecting the dots. From Trump to Clinton, Prince Andrew to Ghislaine, Wexner to mysterious girlfriends who vanished. This is the full cast of characters who made Epstein's world possible, and in some cases, who paid the price. Let's start with Donald Trump, a friendship with Epstein that spanned decades, full of parties, private planes, and very awkward quotes. It didn't end there though. Years later, Trump's name popped back up in Epstein's birthday book, sparking lawsuits, denials, and a $10 billion meltdown. Before Epstein became one of the most infamous names on the internet, before Donald Trump was president, indicted, or suing half the media, these two were just rich New York playboys who loved money, parties, and women, especially the younger kind. This is the full, unfiltered timeline of Donald Trump's decades-long friendship with Jeffrey Epstein. It's wild, it's sleazy, it's loaded with parties, private jets, real estate beefs, weird drawings, and conspiracy theories that just won't die. This is the definitive look at a friendship that started in Palm Beach and ended in a prison cell. Let's break it down year by year. 1980s. The bromance begins. Palm Beach's new power duo. So picture it. Late 1980s, Palm Beach, Florida. Donald Trump had just bought Mar-a-Lago and was busy turning it into his personal gold leaf kingdom. Around the same time, a mysterious financier named Jeffrey Epstein rolled into town, dropped cash on a massive mansion 2 miles north, and started climbing the social ladder like a man on a mission. They met, bonded, and according to Trump, they clicked. He told New York Magazine in 2002, "I've known Jeff 15 years. Terrific guy. He's a lot of fun to be with. It is even said he likes beautiful women as much as I do, and many of them are on the younger side." Yeah, that quote aged like milk. But back in the day, totally normal in their world. Epstein was building his reputation as a mysterious money man with powerful friends, and Trump was the face of glitzy, brash excess. They were cut from the same velvet rope cloth. Rich, showy, and obsessed with image. From New York to Florida, they ran in the same circles. Billionaires, models, and pageant girls. It was the golden age of sleaze, and these two were front and center. 1990s, jet setting, party throwing, and one creepy tape. Now we enter the real fever dream, the 1990s. Trump and Epstein weren't just friendly, they were inseparable socialites. You couldn't throw a Victoria's Secret thong without hitting one of them. Here's what we know. Between 1993 and 1997, Trump flew on Epstein's private jet, aka the Lolita Express, at least 7 times according to court records. Most flights were between Palm Beach, New York, and DC. He never went to the infamous island, but he was clearly comfortable hitching rides. In 1992, Trump hosted a party at Mar-a-Lago for the Buffalo Bills cheerleaders. NBC cameras were there filming. The footage, unearthed in 2019, is now infamous. You see Trump and Epstein in the crowd, drinking, laughing, and pointing at women on the dance floor. At one point, Trump whispers something to Epstein, who buckles over in laughter. It is the most icky time capsule you'll ever see. Later that same year, Trump hosted a calendar girl competition at Mar-a-Lago. The event was supposed to have high-profile guests, but according to the organizer, George Ferrani, the only 2 guys who showed up were Trump and Epstein. Nightmare blunt rotation. In 2019, he said, "I said, Donald, this is supposed to be a party with VIPs. You're telling me it's you and Epstein?" Even worse, his then-girlfriend Jill Harth later sued Trump for sexual misconduct at that very event, alleging he cornered her in a bedroom and groped her. Trump denied it, and the lawsuit was dropped after a separate case got settled. Victoria's Secret parties. In 1997 and again in 1999, Trump and Epstein were photographed at Victoria's Secret Angels parties in New York. And these weren't just fashion shows, they were VIP only, model-heavy social mixers hosted by billionaire Leslie Wexner, who's Epstein's financial benefactor. Until recently, few knew Epstein even attended Trump's 1993 wedding to Marla Maples. But newly unearthed photos confirm it. There he is, schmoozing at the Plaza Hotel, the guest list, rich, white, and dripping in scandal potential. A friend in every room. Multiple witnesses say Trump and Epstein often name-dropped each other. Stacey Williams, a former Sports Illustrated swimsuit model, said Epstein couldn't stop talking about Trump and once walked her into Trump Tower where Trump allegedly groped her. She described it like being part of some sleazy bet between the two men, saying, "I definitely felt like I was a piece of meat delivered as some sort of game." She said in 2024, it became very clear then that he and Donald were really, really good friends and spent a lot of time together. Again, Trump denies everything. And yet their friendship wasn't just casual. According to Epstein himself, they were best friends for years. In secret recordings made by author Michael Wolff in 2017, Epstein brags, "I was Donald's closest friend for 10 years. He even claimed they picked up women together in Atlantic City and that Trump's first time with Melania was on his plane." Trump says it's all fiction, but obviously the gossip doesn't stop there. The 2000s. Red flags start waving. In 2000, 16-year-old Virginia Guthrie was working at Mar-a-Lago as a spa attendant when Ghislaine Maxwell allegedly recruited her for Epstein. Guthrie said she was groomed and abused by Epstein and Maxwell. She maintained that Trump was not involved, but pointedly said, "If you kept hanging around Epstein's house, you knew." Meanwhile, Epstein kept showing up at Mar-a-Lago events, including one in 2000 where Trump, Ghislaine, and Prince Andrew were all photographed. In 2003, Epstein celebrated his 50th birthday. His friends put together a book full of messages. The page labeled Donald included a naked outline of a woman and a note ending with, "Happy birthday, and may every day be another wonderful secret." Trump says it's fake, which at this point you can safely assume he just denies every single thing, okay? Even the photos. Oh, and he's suing literally everyone involved with publishing the birthday book thing, so... 2004, the real estate fight that ended it all. In 2004, Trump and Epstein both wanted the same Palm Beach mansion, but Trump won the bidding war. Epstein lost the house, and apparently he also lost his invite to Mar-a-Lago. Trump later claimed Epstein hired away his spa staff. Other reports say Epstein behaved inappropriately with a member's underage daughter. I mean, either way, both sounded entirely plausible for Epstein, and Trump says he banned him permanently. Just 2 weeks later, police started investigating Epstein after a tip about underage girls at his mansion. 2005 to 2008. Epstein goes down, kinda. In 2005, a 14-year-old's parents went to police. That ended up launching a sprawling investigation into Epstein's sex abuse. Dozens of victims came forward. But in 2008, he struck a very, very sweet plea deal, crafted by then prosecutor Alexander Acasta, who is now Trump's Secretary of Labor. Epstein pleaded guilty to soliciting a minor for prostitution. He served 13 months in a private wing with work release. Trump said nothing, but victim attorney Brad Edwards said Trump was helpful behind the scenes and gave info voluntarily. 2015 to 2016, Trump weaponizes Epstein. By 2015, Epstein was radioactive. The 2008 plea deal was public knowledge. The lawsuits were piling up, and Trump saw opportunity. As he ramped up his campaign for president, he did what he does best: deflect and attack. He started linking Bill Clinton to Epstein at every chance he could. At CPAC in 2015, he said,
Bill Clinton.
Nice guy. Got a lot of problems coming up, in my opinion, with the famous island with Jeffrey Epstein. A lot of problems.
That famous island, of course, was Little St. James, Epstein's private abuse factory in the Virgin Islands. Trump himself has never visited. He even said that he didn't have the privilege.
I never had the privilege of going to his island.
But that didn't matter. The implication was out there. Clinton was dirty and Trump was clean. Behind the scenes, though, It really wasn't that simple. Trump had flown on Epstein's jet. Epstein went to Trump's wedding. They'd partied together for years. Epstein even claimed Trump slept with Melania for the first time on his plane. But Trump stayed quiet about all that and leaned into the Clinton angle hard. He saw Epstein not as a liability, but a weapon. 2019, Epstein's arrested, Trump nopes out. In July 2019, Epstein was arrested again, this time on federal sex trafficking charges. The case was being handled by the Public Corruption Unit in Manhattan. That raised eyebrows immediately. This wasn't just about Epstein. It was about who else might have been involved. Well, Trump's response? Total distance.
For years, I wouldn't talk to Jeffrey Epstein. I wouldn't talk because he did something that was inappropriate.
He insisted he barely knew the guy, despite the flight logs, party footage, birthday messages, wedding photos. Then, 1 month later, Epstein was found dead in his jail cell. The official cause? Suicide by hanging. The public reaction? Yeah, right. The internet exploded with conspiracy theories. Hashtag Epstein didn't kill himself was everywhere. And Trump decided to pour gasoline on the fire. He retweeted a video implying that Bill Clinton had Epstein killed. When reporters asked him about it, Trump just shrugged and said it was a very interesting theory. So let's recap real quick. Epstein dies in federal custody under suspicious circumstances, and the sitting president of the United States is retweeting conspiracy memes about it. Cool. Totally normal. 2020. I wish her well. Then came Ghislaine Maxwell, Epstein's longtime fixer and alleged recruiter, also just total creep of a woman. When she was arrested in 2020 for sex trafficking minors, Trump was asked about it at a press briefing. And his response?
I just wish her well, frankly.
That's it. That's the whole quote. Even some of his own allies were like, what the hell was that? This wasn't some anonymous staffer or distant donor. This was the woman accused of trafficking teenage girls to Trump's former best friend. And he's out here sending warm wishes like it's a birthday card. She's in jail. The internet lost it. Reporters asked if he'd like to clarify. He didn't. 2024, the Epstein Files campaign promise. Flash forward to the 2024 campaign. Trump saw that this Epstein drama wasn't going away, especially in his own base. So he leaned in again, this time with a promise. He told Fox News that if re-elected, he'd be open to declassifying the Epstein files.
But yeah, I'd be inclined to do the Epstein. I'd have no problem with it.
His attorney general pick, Pam Bondi, went even further.
The DOJ may be releasing the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients? Will that really happen?
It's sitting on my desk right now to review.
That set MAGA Twitter on fire. The Epstein list was coming. Justice was near. Except it wasn't. 2025. No list, no justice, just vibes. By July 2025, the Department of Justice finally issued a statement. There was no secret client list. There were no pending bombshells. And yes, Epstein died by suicide. All sorted. Cue the meltdown. MAGA influencers were furious. They accused Trump's team of lying. Some even claimed he was protecting the elites. Imagine that. Trump, as usual, responded by lashing out, so...
Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein?
He then sued the Wall Street Journal for reporting that he had contributed that nude, weird little creepy birthday message to Epstein's 2003 birthday book. Pressed again on the Epstein fallout, Trump just keeps waving it off. It's boring, he said. I would say it is anything but that. So now Trump is mad at his base, the press, the DOJ, the Wall Street Journal, and half of X.com, because everyone keeps asking about a friendship he once called terrific. Epstein's final word, afraid of Trump. Maybe the most haunting moment comes from those secret tapes. In 2017, Jeffrey Epstein told author Michael Wolff.
So how do you know this?
That was close to straight.
He said Trump was obsessed with sex, power, and dominance, and that even he, Epstein, was afraid of him. Trump was not the only powerful man caught a bit flat-footed. Across the Atlantic, Prince Andrew was busy digging himself into an even deeper hole. For years, he swore he cut ties with Epstein in 2010, but emails show he was still feeding Epstein business tips all the way up in 2015. Remember when Prince Andrew went on TV and said he'd never spoken to Jeffrey Epstein after 2010?
But you were staying at the house of a convicted sex offender. it was a convenient place to stay.
Yeah, turns out that was just about as believable as his "I can't sweat" excuse. New leaks show the disgraced Duke was actually feeding Epstein business tips as late as 2015, 5 years longer than he admitted. So let's break down what's in these new documents and why Andrew's claims don't hold up, and how his entire relationship with Epstein was much murkier and more useful to Jeffrey than the prince would like us to believe. The last meeting that wasn't. Prince Andrew's version of events has always gone like this. He first met Epstein in 1999 through Ghislaine Maxwell. After Epstein's 2008 conviction for procuring a minor for prostitution, Andrew says he cut off contact. Then in December 2010, he went to New York with the sole purpose of telling Epstein their friendship was over. That's when these now notorious photos were taken of the pair strolling around in Central Park. That meeting already raised eyebrows. Why end a friendship by staying several days at the guy's house? What are you, a Despo ex? He's like, Epstein, I left a hair tie at yours. I really need to come get it. And also to break up with you properly, I swear. But Andrew doubled down in Newsnight, saying,
Was that visit, December of 2010, the only time you saw him after he was convicted?
Yes.
Did you see him or speak to him again?
No, that was that. Funny enough, 2010 was it. That was it.
But court documents and leaked emails show otherwise. Keep in close touch and we'll play some more. In February 2011, just 2 months after the Central Park breakup stroll, Epstein received a chummy email from a member of the British royal family believed to be Prince Andrew. Keep in close touch and we'll play some more soon. That doesn't sound like a dramatic breakup to me. That sounds like golf buddies making plans. And it didn't stop there. By December 2015, 5 years after Andrew swore he had never talked to Epstein again,
Never happened.
Epstein was telling his friend, former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak, about a new business opportunity in Beijing. Epstein claimed his source was none other than Prince Andrew. I don't want to read this quote, so here it is on screen. When Barak asked how he knew, Epstein replied, Andrew. Barak said, the prince? Epstein, yes. So not only was Andrew still talking to Epstein, he was actively giving him inside info about Chinese business deals, while simultaneously serving as a trade envoy and welcoming President Xi Jinping to the UK. Awkward. Why this matters? The timing is brutal for Prince Andrew. By 2015, Epstein was already a registered sex offender. Virginia had publicly accused both Epstein and Andrew of sexually abusing her when she was 17 years old. New lawsuits from other accusers were rolling in. Yet Andrew apparently saw no problem tipping Epstein off about business leads. This makes his Newsnight denials even shakier and makes his honourable explanation for staying at Epstein's house in 2010 look downright laughable. Epstein's useful idiot. The historian Andrew Lowney just published a damning biography of Andrew, and his assessment of the Epstein relationship is absolutely scathing. He wrote that it was easy to see how Epstein played Andrew. He added, the prince was a useful idiot who gave him respectability and access to political leaders and business opportunities. In other words, Andrew was never just some casual friend in Epstein's orbit. He was a prize, a royal trophy who made Epstein look legitimate to world leaders, billionaires, and shady operators alike. Even Epstein himself seemed to brag about their similarities. According to Lowney's book, in 2007, Epstein allegedly said of Andrew, "We are very similar. We are both serial sex addicts. We have shared the same women. From the reports I've got back from them, he's the most perverted animal in the bedroom. He likes to engage in stuff that's even kinky to me. And I'm the king of kink." Jesus fucking Christ. If true, that is horrifying, and it shows just how entwined Andrew's reputation was with Epstein's sordid, yucky little world. The web of allegations. By now, the accusations against Andrew are very well known. Virginia alleged she was forced to have sex with him in London, New York, and on Epstein's private island when she was only 17 years old. Former Epstein staff testified that Andrew stayed weeks at Epstein's Florida mansion. receiving daily massages. Another accuser, Joanna, claimed Andrew groped her at Epstein's Manhattan townhouse while a puppet of the prince was propped on Virginia's lap. These guys are so weird. It's weird. Andrew has denied all wrongdoing.
Never happened.
In 2022, he quietly paid Virginia a reported 12 to 16 million pound settlement without admitting liability. But every new revelation, whether it's a leaked email, hacked inboxes, or court files, chips away at his denials. Which brings us to a bit of a hot Evie personal take. You might be wondering why I've got so into this Epstein stuff. And the answer is this. There are victims whose entire lives were destroyed by these depraved people, but because they're presidents, billionaires, and royals, many of these victims still don't have justice. These creeps are still running around. One of them is the President of the United States. And that simply pisses me off. Ferguson and the inner circle. Adding to the drama, Ghislaine Maxwell recently claimed she wasn't the one who introduced Andrew to Epstein, that it was actually Andrew's ex-wife, Sarah Ferguson, who pushed the friendship. Ferguson herself admitted back in 2011 that she accepted £15,000 from Epstein to cover debts. This is what makes the story so messy. It wasn't just Andrew. Epstein was weaving himself into the York family, dangling money, influence, connections, whatever. Andrew just happened to be the most useful pawn, and maybe just kind of stupid. Sorry, I said it. He seems a bit dumb. Oh, my bad. Sorry. The consequences. The fallout from the Epstein scandal has left Andrew essentially exiled from royal life. He's in his unemployment era. He's been stripped of his military titles and royal patronages. He doesn't carry out public duties. He rarely appears at family events. Good. Who would want that guy at the family barbecue? While Andrew was floundering publicly, one man stayed almost invisible. Mark Epstein, Jeffrey's brother. His real estate, business ties, and quiet influence raised the question, how much did the Epstein family really know, and how much did they help protect? Mark Epstein was born in 1954 in Brooklyn, New York, a year after his older brother Jeffrey. They grew up in the private, gated community of Seagate, Coney Island, the sons of Pauline and Seymour Epstein. Mark was puggy to his neighbors, a kid who would go on to study at Cooper Union and Stony Brook University. Graduating from Cooper in 1976, his early career was as an artist, but by the late 1980s, he had pivoted into business. He ran Ismo, a t-shirt printing company he founded in 1986, and became the president of J. Epstein & Co., his brother Jeffrey's investment company. He was also head of Atelier Enterprises, a leasing and chartering business. But it was in real estate that he made his biggest moves, eventually running Epstein Acquisitions from 1987 to 2015 and serving as an executive at Ossa Properties. That's where things get interesting. The building with secrets. In the 1990s, Mark bought a 16-story condominium at 301 East 66th Street from billionaire Les Wexner. Yes, the same Les Wexner who had a famously close relationship with Epstein, the Victoria's Secret's owner whose fingerprints and vibes are all over the place. It wasn't just any Manhattan building. According to records and witness accounts, Jeffrey Epstein long used units there to house girlfriends, associates, employees, and businesses. After Jeffrey's 2019 arrest, some speculated the building could have been a hub for moving young women through his network. Mark has denied any role in his brother's operations, the modeling agency that never modeled. In December 2005, Mark Epstein quietly incorporated a new business, Saint Model and Talent. On paper, it was a New York modeling agency. In reality, no one really can point to a single signed model, fashion shoot, or talent booking that ever actually happened. The timing was curious. The mid-2000s were a period where Jeffrey Epstein's own connections to the modeling world were well documented, and accusations were swirling about how modeling agencies could be used to recruit young women into his network. Also, Les Wexner was there running around, who owns Victoria's Secret, and was friends with Epstein and Trump and everybody. Records show that Saint Model and Talent was registered to Mark's business addresses, but despite its apparent inactivity, it was kept incorporated for years. There's no real public signs it generated any revenue or hired staff or even had like an office for models to visit. Mark has never publicly explained why he set it up or what it actually did. And while there's no public evidence linking the agency to his brother's criminal activity, the optics, combined with his ownership of 301 East 66th Street, have fueled ongoing questions about how intertwined the brothers' worlds really were. Big donations, bigger questions. Despite a history of recurring tax debt, Mark has been a six-figure donor to Cooper Union and served as chair of its governing board until resigning in 2015 after a financial crisis and student protests. He's also been involved in the Humpty Dumpty Institute, an international charity linked to members of Congress, to which he loaned over $100,000 in 2014. The brothers' death, most likely murdered. Everything changed in August of 2019 when Jeffrey Epstein was found dead in his Manhattan jail cell. Officially, it was ruled a suicide by hanging, but Mark says that's a lie. They both came out of the autopsy room and said they couldn't call it a suicide because it looked too much like a homicide. Now that never appears in any government report. He told Crime Stories with Nancy Grace, referring to two forensic pathologists, Dr. Michael Baden and a city pathologist who examined the body. Mark claims the broken bones in Jeffrey's neck occur in less than 2% of suicides like this. He says New York's chief medical examiner, Dr. Barbara Sampson, ruled it a suicide without even seeing the body. After the autopsy was over that day, we claimed the body, so she never saw it, he said. He's called the Justice Department's official report bullshit and blasted Trump-era FBI Director Kash Patel as a fucking moron for saying you know a suicide when you see one. The Trump connection. Mark has repeatedly insisted that Donald Trump and Jeffrey were extremely close in the 1990s and early 2000s. They were extremely close. I saw them together. Many people have seen them together, he told Channel 4's Kathy Newman. You've seen videos of them, parties and all over the place, and photographs. He claims Trump was in Jeffrey's office a lot in the early 90s when he was in financial trouble, and that there are witnesses who could testify to that. When the White House denied it, Mark called the statement just another blatant lie. In July of this year, he went even further in an interview with Newsweek. In the 2016 election, we were talking about the election and Jeffrey told me that if he said what he knew about the candidates, they would have to cancel the election. That's a quote. That's exactly what he told me. Mark says Jeffrey never told him the specifics, but we know that Jeffrey had dirt on Donald Trump. We know that. That's a fact. Trump has denied any wrongdoing.
For years, I wouldn't talk to Jeffrey Epstein because he did something that was inappropriate.
Blah, 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 blah. Check out my full video on that. Steve Bannon's 15 hours of Epstein footage. In 2021, the New York Post released a trailer for a documentary Steve Bannon, Trump's former chief strategist, was making about Jeffrey Epstein. It never came out. Mark says Bannon told him he filmed 15 or 16 hours of videotape with Jeffrey in 2018 and 2019, and he was, quote, trying to help Jeff rehabilitate his reputation. Mark's demand is simple. Let me see the videotapes. He's my brother. Bannon now says he'll release a 5-part series early next year, but Mark isn't holding his breath. The will that cut him out. 2 days before his death, Jeffrey signed a will moving all $577 million of his assets into a private trust. If he had died without a will, Mark would have inherited everything. Instead, he got nothing. Mark says he's not a trustee, not a beneficiary, and has no idea who controls the trust. But he did offer his Florida condo as collateral for Jeffrey's bail in 2019. Conspiracy theorist or reluctant whistleblower? To a lot of people, Mark is pushing a conspiracy theory. To others, he's asking legitimate questions about a death that occurred under bizarre circumstances. Guards asleep, cameras malfunctioning, cell doors possibly unlocked. Stop covering things up and let a real honest homicide investigation take place, he told Australian media just last month. Somebody wanted to keep him quiet. So if you thought this was all just royals and family squabbles, think again. Epstein's files, court documents, and donations connect him directly to some of the most powerful politicians in America. From former presidents to current presidents and power players, these are the political figures, past and present, who've been linked to Epstein through fight logs, campaign donations, court records, and the occasional, oh, I barely knew him. And let's be clear, none of this is proof of a crime. But if your name shows up next to Epstein's often enough, people are gonna start asking questions. And so, we are. Here's a little compilation of the US political figures that have ties to the Epstein case. Bill Richardson, former New Mexico governor and UN ambassador. Quick resume. Former governor of New Mexico, 2003 to 2011, US ambassador to the United Nations, energy secretary under Bill Clinton, and a 2008 presidential candidate. Why he's here. In unsealed depositions, Virginia Giuffre claimed Ghislaine Maxwell sent her to New Mexico to give Richardson a massage, which in Epstein world often meant something sexual. She couldn't remember the date or confirm if she was underage, but the allegation was on record. Richardson says it never happened. He says he's never even met Virginia, never seen Epstein with young girls, and that prosecutors told him he wasn't a target, subject, or witness. The New Mexico tie is very much worth noting. Epstein's sprawling Zorro Ranch appears over 24 times in unsealed documents, and Richardson's campaigns in 2002 and 2006 took donations from Epstein. Richardson says he and his wife visited the ranch once, and even offered to help investigators. No charges have ever been filed against him in relation to this. Bill Clinton, 42nd President of the United States. Quick resume. President from 1993 to 2001, former governor of Arkansas, founder of the Clinton Foundation, and a heavyweight in global politics. Why he's here. Flight logs show Clinton on Epstein's jet multiple times. Clinton says it was for 4 trips for foundation work, with Secret Service going along with him. Records suggest it was actually at least 27 flights. Epstein visited the White House at least 17 times while Clinton was president. Virginia alleged Clinton visited Epstein's private island. Clinton denies it. Secret Service logs don't show it, and no evidence confirms it. In January 2024, Clinton's name surfaced again in newly unsealed court documents from Virginia's civil suit against Ghislaine Maxwell. And in August 2025, the House Oversight Committee subpoenaed both Bill and Hillary Clinton as part of a broader probe into the Epstein case. But that's like federal law stuff, not over any direct allegation against him. Bill Clinton denies all wrongdoing and has never been charged in connection to Epstein. Howard Lutnick, Wall Street CEO and US Commerce Secretary. Quick resume. CEO of Cantor Fitzgerald since 1991, major Wall Street figure, and current US Secretary of Commerce. Why he's here. He owned 11 East 71st Street, right next door to Epstein's notorious Manhattan townhouse. Before Lutnick bought it in 1998, the property was tied to Leslie Wexner, Epstein's billionaire associate, through a company where Epstein was vice president. By 2018, Lutnick had paid off the $4 million mortgage. The Commerce Department says Lutnick had no dealings with Epstein. Lutnick himself says he was simply a neighbor, a very unlucky one. Alexander Acosta, former US Attorney and Secretary of Labor. Quick resume. US Attorney for the Southern District of California from 2005 to 2009, and US Secretary of Labor under Donald Trump in 2017 to 2019. Why he's here. Alexander approved Epstein's infamous 2008 non-prosecution agreement. Epstein pleaded guilty to 2 state prostitution charges, served 13 months on work release, and got immunity for any potential co-conspirators. That deal effectively ended a federal sex trafficking probe that could have brought much harsher charges. The DOJ later called his actions poor judgment, but not misconduct. Alexander has claimed he was told Epstein belonged to intelligence and was above his pay grade. Public backlash forced his resignation in 2019, shortly after Epstein's rearrest. Alexander has never faced criminal charges over the deal, only criticism. And yeah, like he was in the government, so, you know. Also, I'm going to want to comment that his name is Alexander Acosta, and like I know that, but the New Zealand accent is sometimes too strong for words to work the way they're supposed to. So I apologize. Donald Trump, President of the United States. Quick resume. President, real estate developer, TV personality, and owner of Mar-a-Lago in Palm Beach. Why he's here. Trump and Epstein were Palm Beach neighbors in the 90s and early 2000s. They were photographed together at events, including Trump's 1993 wedding. In 2002, Trump called Epstein a terrific guy, who likes beautiful women almost as much as I do. A 1992 Mar-a-Lago video shows them laughing together while women dance around nearby. Trump reportedly flew on Epstein's plane in the 90s. By 2004, they had fallen out over a mansion sale. Trump later banned Epstein from Mar-a-Lago for allegedly harassing a teenage girl, something I'm sure they could both spot easily. George Mitchell, former Senate Majority Leader and US envoy. Quick resume. US Senator from Maine from 1980 to 1995. Senate Majority Leader for 6 years, and US Special Envoy for Middle East Peace under President Obama. Why he's here. In court filings, Virginia alleged Epstein told her to have sex with Mitchell. Mitchell flatly denies this. He says he's never met her, and he calls the claims false. Epstein's pilot testified Mitchell flew on Epstein's plane, but said he never saw anything inappropriate. Speaking of politicians, Bill Clinton. The friendship with Bill and Epstein ran for decades, from White House visits to 17 or so flights on Epstein's plane to that bizarre painting of Clinton in a blue dress hanging in Epstein's mansion. A very different energy from Epstein's friendship with Trump, but strange all the same. Imagine stepping into Jeffrey Epstein's $77 million Manhattan mansion. The air is heavy with expensive cologne. The marble floors gleam and every wall is dripping with art. But right there, in pride of place, is something bizarre. A huge painting of Bill Clinton, yes, the former president of the United States, sprawled on a chair, wearing a bright blue dress and red heels, smiling like he knows exactly what you're thinking. It's not a joke from SNL. It was real. Visitors saw it. Someone took a photo, and now it's one of those little details that makes you ask, what exactly was going on between Bill Clinton and Jeffrey Epstein? This isn't about one awkward piece of art. It's about a decades-long connection, campaign donations, White House visits, globe-trotting trips, private island allegations, and more than a few eyebrow-raising quotes from the people who were there. So, let's put it all out on the table. Early 1990s, the first ties. Our story starts in 1992. Bill Clinton's running for president, and Epstein cuts him a $1,000 campaign check. Not huge, but enough to get your name on the donor books. By 1993, Epstein's not just donating, he's physically at the White House. Records later show Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell visited 17 times during Bill Clinton's presidency, sometimes for donor receptions and sometimes for private meetings. He even gave $10,000 to the White House Historical Association. Philanthropy, sure, but also a perfect way to integrate yourself with the president's inner circle. Mid-1990s, the social overlap. By the mid-90s, Clinton's orbit and Epstein's are starting to merge. High-dollar fundraisers in Palm Beach, charity events in New York, donor retreats. The same rich, powerful faces kept turning up in both men's calendars. Inside Epstein's world, people whispered about his tastes. One associate put it bluntly, Bill likes them young too. Now, to be clear, there's no proof Clinton ever committed a crime. But that's the thing about reputations in these circles. Sometimes the perception is enough to stick, whether it's fair or not. 2002, the Africa trip. By 2002, the connection is not just social, it's now logistical. Clinton launches a 5-country AIDS awareness tour across Africa, and flying alongside him is Kevin Spacey, Chris Tucker, and Jeffrey Epstein, whose private Boeing 727 was the ride of choice. This is the same jet tabloids later dubbed the Lolita Express. Kevin Spacey, of all people, would later recall, I felt Epstein put the president at risk with those young girls on board. It was disturbing. There were young girls on those flights. I didn't understand at the time who they were or why they were there. During the trip, Bill Clinton was photographed getting a neck massage from Shantae Davies, a 22-year-old massage therapist who would later accuse Epstein of abuse. Clinton's office insists every trip was above board, with staff, foundation supporters, and his Secret Service detail present. But the imagery from that Africa tour, it's hard to shake. 2002 to 2003, the flights stack up. Officially, Bill Clinton says he took 4 trips on Epstein's plane between 2002 and 2003, 1 to Europe, 1 to Asia, and 2 to Africa. But the flight logs tell a different story. 17 flights, destinations like Morocco, China, Siberia, and Armenia. And curiously, some leagues without any recorded Secret Service present. He also stopped by Epstein's Manhattan mansion during this time. Yeah, this is the same house where that weird blue dress painting would one day hang. And he visited Epstein's office in Harlem. Question, sidebar, I don't really know how private jets work because, I'm not rich, but I'm wondering, how normal is it to need to borrow your mate's plane? Especially when you're the president. Does the leader of the free world need help securing transport? I'm just a bit confused as to how normal it is to be using your weird friend's plane. Maybe it is a common thing. I don't know. Anyway, back to the timeline. 2003, The Birthday Book. For Epstein's 50th birthday, Ghislaine Maxwell curated a leather-bound album filled with personal notes from his friends. Bill Clinton's entry wasn't some generic best wishes. It was warm, personal, handwritten. It's reassuring, isn't it? To have lasted as long across all the years of learning and knowing, adventure and something else, and also to have your childlike curiosity, the drive to make a difference, and the solace of friends. What? What does that even mean? 2003, Little St. James allegations. This is also the year former Clinton aide Doug Band says Clinton visited Epstein's private island, Little St. James. Bill Clinton denies this completely. But in a never-published memoir draft, Virginia Giuffre claims she saw Clinton at a dinner there with two lovely girls, describing him as teasing the girls on either side of him with playful pokes and brassy comments, strolling into the darkness with two beautiful girls around either arm. Bill seemed content to retire for the evening. Unproven? Yes. Damaging? Absolutely. 2005 to 2007. Epstein implodes. By 2005, the Palm Beach police are investigating Epstein for sexually abusing minors. A federal indictment is looming in 2006. But in 2007, Epstein strikes a sweetheart non-prosecution deal. He pleads guilty to soliciting prostitution from a minor and serves just 13 months, most of it on work release. Check out my other video on this. It is a super key detail in the whole saga of Epstein. So I won't get into the details again here today, but go check that out because it's crazy. Through all of this though, Clinton stays quiet. His office will later say that his last contact with Epstein was in 2003. 2010, dinner at the townhouse. Fast forward to December of 2010. Epstein is a registered sex offender. He's already done his jail time. And yet, Clinton shows up at a dinner in Epstein's Manhattan townhouse, hosted by Ghislaine Maxwell. The guest list is, your A-listers. You got Chelsea Handler, Katie Couric, George Stephanopoulos. No one's ever explained exactly why Clinton went. Maybe it was networking, maybe curiosity. But the optics here are terrible. The man is a registered sex offender. What made you show up? Did you get FOMO or did you have to? A lot to ponder on that one, team. A lot to ponder. Wonder if anyone's blackmailing anyone. I don't know. Just throwing that out there. 2015, the flight logs surfaced. In 2015, court filings from a Florida case make Epstein's detailed flight logs public. They confirm Clinton took multiple trips on Epstein's plane. His office doubles down. 4 trips, always with staff and Secret Service. But in the public's mind, 4 doesn't match 17. 2019, Epstein arrested again. July 6, 2019, Epstein is arrested on federal sex trafficking charges. 2 days later, Bill Clinton issues a statement. President Clinton knows nothing about the terrible crimes Jeffrey Epstein pleaded guilty to in Florida some years ago, or those with which he has been recently charged in New York. He repeats the 4 trips line, and yet, as media coverage intensifies, one strange detail keeps popping back up. That freaky painting. The artist later said she had sold it years earlier and had never met Epstein. But why did Epstein own it? Why hang it? Was it an inside joke? A humiliation trophy? Or something else entirely? August 2019, Epstein dies. In August 2019, Epstein is found dead in his Manhattan jail cell. Officially, suicide. Publicly, 1,000 conspiracy theories bloom overnight. Clinton stays silent. The questions don't. 2020, Ghislaine Maxwell is arrested. In July 2020, Ghislaine Maxwell is arrested, Doug Bann tells Vanity Fair he warned Clinton years earlier to cut ties with both Epstein and Maxwell, and repeats his claim that Clinton visited the island. Clinton spokesperson repeats the denial. 2024, the birthday album resurfaces. The Wall Street Journal published photos of Epstein's 2003 birthday album. Clinton's personal note is there, a time capsule from when their friendship seemed comfortable, even close. 2025, Congress steps in. On August 6 of 2025, the US House Oversight Committee subpoenas both Bill and Hillary Clinton, saying that they have credible evidence, travel records, photos, correspondence, that raise serious questions about the nature of Clinton's relationship with Epstein. Clinton's team says he's already addressed the matter and has nothing further to add. This whole thing though, the subpoenas, it's kind of like smoke and mirrors. This is a federal thing, and although Fox News keeps reporting Bill as prime suspect, that is essentially totally inaccurate. The House Oversight Committee, headed by Republicans, have subpoenaed the DOJ for all the Epstein investigative materials, unredacted if possible, and they've called in high-profile figures including Bill and Hillary Clinton, demanding they sit for depositions later this year. Just the other day, the Trump administration made a really big song and dance about unsealing some pointless Ghislaine files that had nothing in them. This may just be part of all that. The witness list also includes other big names like James Comey and Robert Mueller. So don't misunderstand and think they're just coming at Bill and Hillary, they're coming after everything and everyone. No Epstein story is complete without Ghislaine Maxwell. She wasn't just his girlfriend, she was his fixer, his recruiter, his gatekeeper, and she ended up in prison for it. While she's in prison, the Trump administration tried to use her name as a political distraction, hyping up the release of secret grand jury testimony that turned out to be basically nothing. How does the daughter of a billionaire, Oxford-educated, fluent in 5 languages, end up recruiting teenage girls for a sex trafficker?
Are you happy? I'm happy.
From the outside, Ghislaine Maxwell had it all. Wealth, charms, connections to royalty. But behind the smiles and the yachts was a woman shaped by power and addicted to it. She didn't just cover for Jeffrey Epstein. She enabled him, trained victims, managed logistics, built the whole machine. From a 53-room mansion in Oxford to a 6x9 prison cell in Florida. This is the rise, fall, and unraveling of Ghislaine Maxwell. How she got here, what she did, and the twisted legacy she's still fighting to control. 1961, born into wealth and shadow. Ghislaine Noelle Marion Maxwell was born on Christmas Day, 1961, in France, into power, into prestige, and a family already falling apart. She's the 9th and youngest child of Robert and Elizabeth Maxwell. Her father is a larger-than-life figure, a Czech-born Holocaust survivor turned British media baron. Her mother, a French academic, is quiet, cerebral, and often absent, physically and emotionally. But Ghislaine's birth wasn't met with celebration. Just 3 days before she was born, her 15-year-old brother Michael was in a catastrophic car accident that left him in a coma. For the next 6 years, her parents were consumed with grief and medical care. Ghislaine, by her own mother's admission, was neglected. At just 3 years old, Ghislaine stood in front of her mother and declared, "Mummy, I exist." That quote would follow her for the rest of her life and might be the most psychologically revealing thing she ever said. 1970s, Daddy's Girl. The Maxwell family was rich, glamorous, and deeply dysfunctional. They lived in Headington Hill Hall, a 53-room mansion in Oxford, which Robert Maxwell cheekily called the best council house in the country because it was technically leased from Oxford City Council. Inside the grand estate, the atmosphere was tense, paranoid, and emotionally barren. Robert was feared by everyone. Staff, executives, even his children. He was authoritarian, controlling, and capable of explosive rages. He spied on his employees, bugged their phones, and demanded absolute loyalty. He publicly humiliated his children and sent them up to compete with each other for approval. But Ghislaine was different. She was his favorite. She was given horses, tutors, and access to his inner circle. When she got into Oxford, just like Daddy, He was proud, but the favoritism came with strings. Ghislaine learned early that survival meant submission. To be loved meant to be useful. And when power yelled, you smiled. 1980s, The Apprentice. After graduating from Marlborough College, Ghislaine attended Balliol College at Oxford University, studying modern history and languages. She was charming, bright, and eager to impress. Notably, she was one of the few women regularly invited to the all-male dining clubs where her father socialized. Robert was already grooming her for business. He installed her as a director at Oxford United Football Club. She briefly ran a corporate gift company that he bought for her, but she wasn't truly independent. Everything she had came through him. In 1986, he bought a lavish yacht and named it the Lady Ghislaine, an ultimate display of ownership and affection. Looking back, many biographers argue that Ghislaine never truly individuated. She moved from her father's dominance straight into Epstein's. It wasn't just loyalty, it was imprinting. 1991, the death that changed everything. In November 1991, Robert Maxwell vanished from the deck of his yacht, the Lady Ghislaine. Days later, his bloated body was found in the Atlantic. Ghislaine was reportedly inconsolable, collapsing in public. Her world shattered.
Life is sad. It's always very sad when you lose a parent, but you have to go on.
And then came the scandal. Auditors discovered that Robert had looted £440 million from company pension funds. He died a disgraced thief. His empire collapsed. 2 of her brothers were arrested for fraud. Ghislaine's reputation in Britain became radioactive. She fled to New York on a one-way ticket, determined to rebuild. This moment, her father's death and disgrace, was her origin story. She was orphaned not just emotionally, but socially, and she needed a new patron. 1992, enter Epstein. Once in Manhattan, Ghislaine moved fast. She tapped into her high society contacts, mingling with billionaires, royals, and celebrities. And soon, she met Jeffrey Epstein, a secretive financier with enormous wealth and no obvious origin story. They quickly became an item. But even when the romantic side allegedly fizzled out, their bond remained. Ghislaine wasn't just his girlfriend, she was his partner in ambition. She introduced him to the elite. She organized his social life. And according to victims and prosecutors, she facilitated his abuse. 1994 to 1997, the grooming begins. Multiple women testified that during this period, Ghislaine began actively recruiting underage girls for Epstein. Annie Farmer says she met Ghislaine at 16 years old. Ghislaine took her shopping, gave her a topless massage, and created an environment where boundaries blurred. Her older sister, Maria Farmer, had already reported Epstein and Maxwell to the FBI in 1996, but nothing happened. Virginia Guffey, then Virginia Roberts, said Maxwell approached her at Mar-a-Lago when she was just 16 years old. She was working at the spa. Maxwell offered her a massage job. What followed was years of trafficking. She trained me, Virginia later said. She told me what Epstein liked, how to please him, what to wear. 2000, running the empire. Maxwell moved into a $5 million Manhattan townhouse paid for by Epstein. She ran his properties, hired staff, scheduled travel, and allegedly recruited girls. Victims called her the lady of the house. Staffers were told to never look Epstein in the eye. Maxwell reportedly kept a list of available girls. She was not peripheral. She was the architect of his world. 2005, cracks in the wall. A 14-year-old girl told Palm Beach police that Epstein had molested her during a massage. Police launched an investigation. They found dozens of victims. Some said Maxwell had recruited them. The FBI was informed, but no charges were brought yet. Epstein gets offered an unbelievable plea deal. 13 months in jail, mostly on work release, and he avoids federal charges. The deal also granted immunity to potential co-conspirators, including Ghislaine. So she again slips away untouched. But Virginia Guffey sues, naming Maxwell. She says she was trafficked to powerful men, including Prince Andrew. Maxwell denies it. The case is settled in 2017. 2012, the Ocean Savior Act. In a bizarre PR pivot, Maxwell launches the Terramar Project, a marine conservation nonprofit. She speaks at the UN, partners with media outlets, and rides submarines around. It's brand rehab. But by now, journalists are digging. Lawsuits are piling up, and her past is catching up with her. 2019, everything implodes. July 6, Epstein is arrested again for sex trafficking minors across state lines. On August 10th, Epstein is found dead in his jail cell. The autopsy says suicide, but the guards were asleep, the cameras failed, and we all know public suspicion is still what it is today. At this point, Ghislaine vanishes. Her nonprofit shuts down overnight, and her lawyers go silent. 2019, CIA and cheeseburgers. Weeks after Epstein's death, a staged paparazzi photo surfaces. Maxwell at an In-N-Out burger reading a book about CIA operatives. It's fake, staged, spun, and honestly kind of weird. In reality, Ghislaine was hiding out in luxury homes all around the US with armed guards and encrypted tech. July 2nd, 2020, arrested. FBI agents raid a $1 million New Hampshire estate she bought in cash under a fake name. She's arrested and charged with the following: inciting minors to travel for sex, sex trafficking, perjury, and conspiracy. She pleads not guilty, but prosecutors call her a flight risk with global connections, which she was. 2021, countdown to the trial. Maxwell gets denied bail multiple times. She complains about jail conditions, paper clothes, invasive searches, no sleep. Her lawyers argue she's a scapegoat, but victims are ready to testify. 4 women testify, all say Maxwell was an active participant in Epstein's abuse. One says Ghislaine gave her a schoolgirl outfit and told her to serve Epstein tea. The defense attempts to paint these victims as confused or greedy, but the jury is not having it. December 29, 2021, guilty. Ghislaine Maxwell is convicted on 5 of 6 charges: sex trafficking a minor, transporting a minor for sex, conspiracy. The verdict is clear. She wasn't a bystander. She was a predator's enabler and sometimes his partner. June 28, 2022, sentencing. Ghislaine is sentenced to 20 years in prison. The judge calls her behavior heinous and predatory. I would agree with that. Survivors speak in court. Maxwell, still defiant, offers no apology. She simply says, "I hope this brings you peace." 2023 to 2025, start the spin cycle. From prison, she's given some jailhouse interviews. She claims Epstein was murdered.
I believe that he was murdered.
That the Prince Andrew photo was fake, that she was duped, and that prison is hell. Go, I hope it is. She's still got no guilt, no accountability. 2025, her final power play starts. In July 2025, Ghislaine Maxwell re-enters the spotlight, not from prison, but from Washington's political power corridors. Here's what's happening right now. Her legal team has officially responded to a congressional subpoena, offering to testify before the House Oversight Committee, but only if 4 critical conditions are met. Formal immunity from any future prosecution, a deposition outside prison in Washington, D.C., advance access to the questions she'll be asked, and a pardon or clemency granted by President Trump. So basically, she gets away with all of it. Maxwell's lawyers argue that she's prepared to expose a list of up to 100 individuals tied to Epstein's network, but she needs legal protection first. Otherwise, they say, she'll invoke her Fifth Amendment rights and refuse to testify. Basically, translation, this yucky, disgusting woman knows all of these 100 people that she could have said any time in any of the trials, any time that she's been in prison, but no, she will only say who these predators are who are still at large if she can be confirmed to just get away with it. I'm sorry to be worked up, but I find that absolutely disgusting. Oversight Committee has firmly rejected her request for immunity, and the hearing is officially scheduled for August 11 to take place at the Tallahassee Federal Prison, where she's serving her rightly deserved 20-year sentence. Yet political tensions are high. Senate Democrats, invoking an obscure rule of 5, are demanding full FBI files on the Epstein case before that August 15th date. Meanwhile, President Trump hasn't ruled out a pardon for his old friend, but insists no one has actually asked him for one. If you want to understand Ghislaine Maxwell, her rise, her fall, and her uncanny attraction to powerful men with secrets, you have to look at her father. Robert Maxwell wasn't just a media mogul. He was a war hero, a fraudster, a suspected spy, and a man whose mysterious death still fuels conspiracy theories 3 decades later. This is the story of the man nicknamed the Bouncing Czech, who climbed from a wooden shack in Czechoslovakia to the heights of British power, only to fall, quite literally, from his yacht into infamy. And like all great scandals, it leaves us with one big question. Who exactly was Robert Maxwell? From poverty to power. Robert Maxwell wasn't born Maxwell at all. He was Jan Ludwig Hoch, born in 1923 to a poor Jewish family in Czechoslovakia. His early life was marked by tragedy. Most of his family were murdered at Auschwitz. At just 16, he fled Nazi occupation, cut off the side locks that marked him as a Hasidic, and escaped to France. From there, he joined the Czechoslovak army in exile, eventually transferring to the British army. He distinguished himself in battle and won the Military Cross in 1945 for storming a German machine gun nest. By then, he had reinvented himself as Ian Robert Maxwell. This was the first of many reinventions. As one biographer put it, Maxwell created his own myths as a kind of smokescreen to hide behind, building an empire and enemies. After the war, Maxwell dove into publishing, securing the rights to distribute scientific papers through his company, Pergamon Press. By the 1960s, he had built it into a powerhouse. But scandal was never far away. A government inquiry in 1971 declared Maxwell, not in our opinion, a person who can be relied on to exercise proper stewardship of a publicly quoted company. Ouch. Still, he called back, and in 1984 he finally achieved his dream, buying the Mirror Group, home of the Daily Mirror. Now he was a tabloid king, and a rival to Rupert Murdoch. The two despised each other. As Murdoch later said bluntly, Maxwell was a crook and a total buffoon. But Maxwell wasn't just about newspapers. He bought helicopter companies, football clubs, language schools, and even the New York Daily News. He dined with world leaders, posed with Princess Diana, chatted to Margaret Thatcher, and rubbed shoulders with US presidents. All the while, people whispered that Maxwell had ties to MI6, the KGB, and Mossad, maybe even all three. Alleged double or triple agent, visionary or spy, who knew? The monster at home. Maxwell's empire wasn't the only place he ruled with an iron fist. At home in Headington Hill Hall, the Oxford mansion he famously called the best council house in the country, he was a terrifying patriarch. Family lunches were nightmares. His children later recalled sitting in fear, waiting for his gaze to land on them. He humiliated them in public. Biographer John Preston described it as the searchlight beam of her father's gaze moving around the table towards her. Bit creepy. Only one child seemed safe, Ghislaine. She was the youngest, born in 1961, and by all accounts, his favorite. She was his constant companion at events, from Elton John's birthday party to football matches. He even named his yacht after her, the Lady Ghislaine. Betty Maxwell, her mother, later recalled, Ghislaine is the baby of the family and the one who was closest to her father. The whole of Ghislaine's world collapsed after his death. Scandals, secrets, and the shadow of Israel. By the 1980s, Maxwell was living large, but cracks were showing. He was drowning in debt, borrowing from dozens of banks. To keep up appearances, he began secretly raiding his company's pension funds, ultimately leaving a £460 million hole. At the same time, he became deeply involved with Israel. He invested heavily in Israeli businesses, donated millions, and was close to political leaders including Prime Minister Yitzhak Shamir. Then came darker rumors. Whistleblowers claimed Maxwell helped Mossad sell doctored software called Promise, which contained a hidden backdoor, letting Israel spy on governments worldwide. Was this guy a businessman, a patriot, or a spy trading secrets? Like, what was going on? Maxwell denied all of that, but those suspicions have really never gone away. The fall of Captain Bob. By late 1991, Maxwell was cornered. His companies were collapsing under billions in debt. Banks were circling. A BBC Panorama investigation was digging into his financial irregularities, and his own finance director was demanding answers about the missing pension money. On November 5th, 1991, Maxwell vanished from his yacht, the Lady Ghislaine, off of the Canary Islands. Hours later, his naked body was found floating in the Atlantic. The official verdict? Heart attack, accidental drowning. But right off the bat, few people believed it. One former colleague insisted Maxwell had been suicidal. He was a man who could not face the ignominy of jail. So, I am a suicide theorist. Others thought it was a clumsy accident. Photographer Ken Lennox, who saw his body, recalled, "He used to get up at night and pee over the stern of the ship. I think he lost his balance because he was very top-heavy." Then, of course, there's the murder theory. Ghislaine herself claimed he was pushed. Conspiracy theorists pointed fingers at Mossad, suggesting Maxwell tried to extort Israel and paid the price. Adding fuel to the fire, his body was buried in Jerusalem with what was essentially a state funeral. The Prime Minister at the time attended. Mossad's chiefs were there too. For some, that was proof that he'd been more than just a businessman. Meanwhile, Leslie Wexner, the man behind Victoria's Secret, quietly gave Epstein billions in access, power of attorney over his fortune, and even the mansion he lived in. Their bizarre friendship continues to raise questions. Epstein weaponized Wexner's brand too, posing as a talent scout for Victoria's Secret models and allegedly luring victims with the company's prestige. Leslie Wexner built a retail empire. Jeffrey Epstein built a sex trafficking ring. And for 2 decades, their lives, fortunes, and secrets were deeply, shockingly intertwined. This is the story of how the billionaire behind Victoria's Secret became the man who gave Epstein power, protection, and maybe even cover. The strange, scandalous bond between Leslie Wexner and Jeffrey Epstein. Let's set the scene. It's the late 1980s. Leslie Wexner is riding high. He's already a retail kingpin, founder of The Limited, owner of Victoria's Secret, and one of the richest men in America. But something's missing. Maybe it's excitement, maybe it's companionship, maybe it's just someone to trust with all his billions. Enter Jeffrey Epstein. Who exactly brought this guy in? That depends who you ask. But one thing is clear. Once Epstein entered Wexner's world, he didn't just become his money manager. He became his gatekeeper, his fixer, his shadow, his confidant, and maybe, just maybe, his greatest liability. How a Brooklyn math teacher got power of attorney over a billionaire. Jeffrey Epstein's resume was thin, to put it mildly. College dropout and former high school teacher, Epstein briefly worked at Bear Stearns before being forced out over irregularities with expenses and rumors of an inappropriate relationship with a secretary. But for what Epstein lacked in qualifications, he made up for in charm and manipulation. According to a 2021 Vanity Fair investigation, Epstein wormed his way into Wexner's orbit after convincing insurance mogul Robert Meister that Wexner's financial advisor was stealing from him. Epstein pitched himself as a bounty hunter for rich people's money, and Meister introduced him to Wexner. That one intro changed everything. Despite warnings from people close to him, Wexner handed Epstein the keys to the kingdom, literally. In July 1991, Wexner signed a power of attorney that allowed Epstein to hire and fire, buy and sell, borrow money, sign checks, anything in Wexner's name. You know, like, this isn't just like, oh, I trust you with all my investments. This was like, here's my whole life, from financial advisor to puppet master. The 1990s saw Epstein's fingerprints all over Wexner's empire. He managed construction of Wexner's $100 million super yacht, Limitless. He oversaw real estate deals. He even ran Wexner's charities and signed off on the family's tax filings. He also somehow ended up living in some of the most extravagant properties Wexner ever owned. Epstein acquired a $77 million mansion on East 71st Street in Manhattan, previously Wexner's, for free. Like, he just gave him the house. A limited-owned Boeing 727, that ended up in Epstein's hands too. In Columbus, Ohio, Epstein bought a 10,000 square foot home right next to Wexner for $3.5 million. Years later, Wexner's company quietly bought it back for more than double. How did a high school math teacher turned Wall Street outcast manage all this? 2 words: complete control. Epstein was the trustee of a dozen shadowy trusts tied to Wexner, selling off over $1.3 billion worth of stock in the limited. Some of that money went to charity, some of it, according to ABC News and researcher Tom Volshko, lined Epstein's pockets through suspiciously timed purchases, like private islands, jets, luxury condos. In 2019, the Wall Street Journal reported that Epstein earned at least $200 million from Wexner. Some insiders say the real number may be closer to $400 million. Less would do anything for me. Epstein didn't just manage Wexner's money, he managed his life. According to Epstein, the two were closer than family. Les knows everything about me. He knows every experience I've had, Epstein once said. He inserted himself into Wexner's personal relationships, even reportedly offering a breakup bribe to a woman Wexner was dating. When Wexner did get married in 1993, Epstein helped write the prenup and sat in his mother's seat at the wedding. Bella Wexner, Les Wexner's domineering mother, hated Epstein, and she wasn't the only one. Former security chief Jerry Merritt recalled Epstein posturing with a gun he clearly didn't know how to use. Employees said Epstein would call them and speak without introducing himself because, in his mind, he was already their boss. Even senior executives at the Limited were alarmed. One said Les berated people, but with Epstein, he'd put his hand on his shoulder. Another recalled Epstein once declaring himself the one to decide Abercrombie & Fitch's IPO share price. Like, this was madness. Multiple people, including Wexner's longtime advisor Harold Levin, warned Wexner directly. Epstein was a fraud, but Wexner didn't listen. From Victoria's Secret to Victoria's Scout, here's where things get a bit darker. Epstein didn't just use Wexner's fortune, he used his brand, especially Victoria's Secret, as a lure. At least 2 women have said Epstein posed as a Victoria's Secret talent scout in the 90s and early 2000s. In 1997, model Alicia Arden told Santa Monica police that Epstein groped her after inviting her to audition for Victoria's Secret. She thought she was meeting with someone who had Wexner's blessing. He did not. Elizabeth Tai, another model, had a similar story. Epstein invited her to his New York mansion under the same pretense, stripped naked, and handed her a vibrator. A Victoria's Secret executive confirmed to the New York Times that they'd reported Epstein's behavior to Wexner in the mid-1990s. What, if anything, did he do? Well, that remains murky, but looks like probably nothing. Wexner has since claimed he had no knowledge of Epstein's abuse, but victims and former employees say the signs were there and loud. The Maria Farmer horror story. Perhaps one of the more chilling connections between Wexner and Epstein came through artist Maria Farmer. In 1996, Epstein convinced Farmer to spend the summer painting at Wexner's private Ohio compound. What she didn't realize, this isolated property had security guards with guns and dogs, and she needed permission to jog outside. Farmer alleges that she was sexually assaulted by Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell there. When she called 911, she says the dispatcher told her, "We work for Wexner." She fled to New York and reported it to the FBI, but they never followed up. Farmer's younger sister Annie was also abused at Epstein's New Mexico ranch, and both women say the Wexners enabled this by giving Epstein cover, credibility, and access. In 2021, L Brand shareholders sued the Wexners in Delaware, accusing Abigail Wexner of acquiescence while Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell sexually assaulted Maria Farmer in the New Albany compound, the town that Wexner built. So yeah, he built his own weird town. At first glance, New Albany, Ohio looks like something out of a postcard. Wide, brick-paved streets, white picket fences, Georgian architecture, horse stables, a town square that could double as a movie set. But this isn't just small-town Americana or like, I don't know, another season of Gilmore Girls. This is Wexnerville. It was here, according to Maria Farmer, that she was sent by Epstein to work on her art, and later where she says she was sexually assaulted by Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. This is where she called 911 and was allegedly told, "We work for Wexner." She wasn't exaggerating either. The Franklin County Sheriff's Office was contacted for Wexner's security at the time. The town may have had a mayor, but everyone knew who was really in charge. The fall of Les Wexner. In public, Wexner said he cut ties with Epstein in 2007 after the first federal investigation into Epstein's sex crimes. Privately, their financial connection may have lasted a bit longer. In 2008, Epstein mysteriously donated $46 million back to a charity controlled by Wexner. Wexner later claimed that that was only a portion of the money Epstein had misappropriated, but he refused to say how much more was missing or whether he bothered to report that to the FBI. After Epstein's 2019 arrest and death, Wexner told L Brand's employees he was never aware of the illegal activity charged in the indictment, but the scrutiny didn't stop. In early 2020, Wexner announced he was stepping down as CEO of L Brands after nearly 60 years. He tried to spin it as a new chapter for the company, but behind the scenes, investigations were mounting. Shareholders, journalists, and even former friends were asking, what did Les know and when did he know it? In 2024, new allegations surfaced. In January of last year, newly unsealed court documents tied to Virginia Giuffre's 2015 lawsuit included a shocking allegation that she was forced to wear lingerie for Wexner, provided by Epstein and Maxwell, and had sex with him multiple times. Wexner has not been charged with any crime. He has denied all wrongdoing and insists he has no knowledge of Epstein's abuse, even though he gave him his house, all his money, they lived in the same town, they hung out all the time. Yeah, but he didn't know. And if you thought the fallout was only American, well, catch up. The UK proved otherwise. When Epstein's files hit London, they cost one of Britain's top diplomats his job. People actually get fired for this stuff sometimes. Because while Washington pretends none of this matters, London just fired its top diplomat in the US, Lord Peter Mandelson, over his Epstein ties. Yeah, the same birthday book that Trump says is fake also included Mandelson calling Epstein my best pal. And unlike in the US, this actually had consequences. The book was that bad. The emails were worse. In 2008, after Epstein was already a convicted sex offender, Mandelson emailed him this: I think the world of you, and I feel hopeless and furious about what has happened. Your friends stay with you and love you. He even urged Epstein to fight for early release and suggested his conviction was wrongful and should be challenged. Remember, at the time, this wasn't just speculation. By then, Epstein had pleaded guilty to soliciting a minor. He was a freaking registered freaking sex offender, and this guy's like, your friends will stay by you. In the birthday book, Mandelson gushed. Once upon a time, an intelligent, sharp-witted man they call mysterious parachuted into my life. Wherever he is in the world, he remains my best pal. Damn, that is not just like fundamentally embarrassing. That is career suicide. Also, like, these messages are so weird and theatrical, right? Doing like voiceovers and parachuting into my life. Like, what are we doing bits for? Did we all go to theater school? Like, what is this? Finally, we end with Epstein's most mysterious companion, Karina Shuliak. In his final hours, Jeffrey Epstein made one phone call. Not to his lawyer, not to his family, to a woman almost no one knew, Karina Shuliak, a dentist from Belarus, his last girlfriend, the only visitor he had in jail, and the last person to ever hear his voice. So, who is she? And what does she know? From Minsk to Manhattan, who is Karina Shuliak? Born in 1989 and raised in Minsk, Karina arrived in the United States in 2009 at the age of 20. That same year, Epstein was released from prison after serving time for soliciting a minor. Coincidence? Maybe. But that's exactly when Karina entered his orbit. She started dating him around 2010, a time when most of his old allies have abandoned him, but not Karina. She stuck with him for nearly a decade, reportedly becoming his longest-lasting romantic partner. According to friends, she was intensely loyal. Some called her the Inspector because of how obsessed she was with tracking Epstein's every move. Jealous, yes, but also watchful, paranoid, always investigating. She reportedly dug through his calls, his contacts, and his visitors, and in doing so, she may have uncovered more than she bargained for. A marriage of convenience or control. In 2013, Karina married Jennifer Carlin, a longtime Epstein associate and, according to several lawsuits, an alleged victim. The marriage ended in 2019, just weeks after Epstein's arrest. Lawyers representing Epstein's victims has described this as a sham marriage, part of a broader pattern where Epstein arranged fake unions to help young women, often non-citizens, stay in the US and under the radar. Attorney Sigrid McCauley described it bluntly. These sham same-sex marriages served a basic and important purpose for Jeffrey's trafficking operation. Karina never faced legal charges, but her immigration status, connection to Carlin, and her long-term relationship with Epstein placed her right in the middle of the web. The last voice Epstein ever heard. On the night of August 9th, 2019, just hours before Epstein was found dead in his Manhattan jail cell, he made one last phone call. He told prison guards he was calling his mother, but she had been dead since 2004. In reality, Epstein called Karina Shuliak. The call lasted 15 minutes. It wasn't attorney-client privileged. It should have been recorded, and yet the official call logs don't include it. Instead, they say the last time he spoke to her was over 1 week earlier. Why? That question remains unanswered. Prosecutors from the Southern District of New York reportedly reviewed the recording, but never released the contents. Whatever Epstein said to her, we still don't know. Karina has refused to speak to authorities. She declined to talk to prosecutors, but sources close to her say she didn't think Epstein was suicidal. When she hung up, she was reportedly not under the impression that he was going to kill himself. Epstein's lawyers echoed that sentiment, with one attorney telling a Manhattan court that Epstein, quote, did not seem like a despairing, despondent, suicidal person. Karina may be the only person alive who knows the truth. Did Epstein buy her silence or her love? Epstein didn't just date Karina, he financed her entire life. He allegedly paid for her tuition at Columbia University, paid for her mother's expensive medical treatments, and even funded the home where her parents live in Minsk. She had a high-flying life, it seems. Here she is on a yacht with none other than Meghan Markle, right? Meghan, what are you doing here? She lived in Epstein's Palm Beach mansion from 2015 to 2018. She lived on Little St. James, his private island in the Virgin Islands. She was on his private jet when the FBI arrested him in July of 2019. And somehow, through all of this, she remains invisible to the media and public for nearly, a decade? She was fixing teeth. What else did she see? Here's where things get a little bit weirder. Karina is a licensed dentist, not just in Florida and California, but also in the Virgin Islands, where Epstein kept his, spooky island compound. Her dental practice is listed at an address connected to Epstein. According to multiple reports, Epstein had a dentist chair installed on Little St. James and another one in his Palm Beach home. Some sources claim he liked to fix up the teeth of women in his inner circle. So was Karina the one doing it? Was she doing everyone's teeth? We don't know, but the implication is a bit chilling. The inspector. What did she find? Friends say Karina was madly jealous of Epstein. Not exactly surprising, considering he admitted on prison intake forms that he had had more than 10 sexual partners in the previous 5 years. But her jealousy wasn't just emotional, it was investigative. She reportedly obsessed over his calls, his meetings, his emails. She wanted to know who he was seeing, what they were talking about, and why. That obsessive curiosity earned her the nickname The Inspector. She wasn't part of the trafficking network, at least not according to current evidence, but she was close enough to know who was involved. She saw the inner circle. She was there when Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak visited Epstein's mansion in 2016. She was seen entering and exiting the property with Susan Hamblin, another Epstein confidant. And she was there until the very end. A source told the Daily Mail no one stayed with him except Karina, even his closest friends. So what does she know? And why hasn't she talked? Known Epstein victim Virginia Guthrie once said, if you walked foot into Jeffrey Epstein's house and you went in there and you continued to be an acquaintance of his, then you would have to have known what was going on. I think it's kind of bizarre that this mysterious woman known as the Inspector allegedly didn't know what was going on. I couldn't really figure out why the FBI didn't investigate her. I mean, maybe they did, I don't know. But I find this aspect extremely strange. Like, it's just like kind of odd. So whether it's a US president, a British royal, a retail billionaire, or a vanished girlfriend, the web around Epstein is full of people who thought they were untouchable. Some lost power, some lost reputations, and some, like Epstein himself, lost everything. But others, well, they lost nothing. The shadow of these connections is still with us, and they tell us more about how power really works than Epstein ever could on his own. This video was a compilation of a bunch of my Epstein research. If you want to stay up to date with what's going on, then make sure you subscribe. I do videos like this 5 days a week.